The United Nations General Assembly in September 2025 was a powder keg, its grand hall buzzing with anticipation and anxiety. Delegates from every corner of the globe gathered under the iconic blue and white emblem, aware that the world was teetering on the edge of a historic turning point. With global tensions at an all-time high, the air was thick with uncertainty. Diplomats huddled in urgent conversations, their faces etched with concern, as rumors of new alliances and confrontations swirled through the corridors. The return of Donald Trump, fresh from his election win and pushing an uncompromising America First agenda, set the stage for confrontation. His presence was impossible to ignore. Flanked by a formidable security detail, he strode into the assembly, determined to reshape the global order on his own terms. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas was absent, denied a U.S. visa, his empty seat a stark symbol of exclusion. The absence sent shockwaves through the assembly, highlighting the deep divisions and the fraught nature of the moment. Instead, Abbas addressed the assembly via video, a move approved by an overwhelming majority, defying U.S. pressure. His virtual presence was a powerful act of resistance as he called for justice and recognition for his people, his words echoing in a hall that had denied him entry. The backdrop was a devastating two-year war in Gaza, with the world demanding a permanent ceasefire. Images of destruction and the cries of protesters outside the UN underscored the urgency. As the humanitarian crisis reached a breaking point, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu faced mass walkouts and accusations of genocide. The assembly floor became a battleground, with empty seats and pointed gestures revealing the depth of international outrage. Leaders like Brazil's Lula and Turkey's Erdogan abandoned diplomatic niceties, openly challenging U.S. and Israeli policies. Their speeches were fiery, demanding accountability and a new approach to peace and justice. This was not just another round of speeches, it was a reckoning, exposing the raw fault lines of global power. The world watched as the United Nations became the stage for a dramatic struggle over the future of international order, with every word and gesture carrying the weight of history. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa took the podium, his presence commanding the attention of the entire assembly. As he stood before the world's leaders, there was a sense of history in the air, a recognition that this was not just another speech, but a voice shaped by decades of struggle and resilience. Ramaphosa carried with him the weight of his nation's long and painful fight against apartheid, a system that had once divided his own country and left deep scars on its people. The echoes of those years, of protest, sacrifice and hope, were present in every word he spoke. His very presence at the United Nations was a powerful reminder that South Africa's history gives it a unique moral authority on issues of oppression and injustice. The world watched, aware that Ramaphosa spoke not only for his country, but for all those who have endured the pain of discrimination. At the high-level meeting on the two-state solution, Ramaphosa's calm resolve and measured words commanded the room. He spoke with the quiet confidence of someone who has seen the worst of humanity, yet still believes in the possibility of peace. Moving swiftly from calls for dialogue, he confronted the harsh realities unfolding in Gaza. Ramaphosa did not shy away from describing the devastating human cost of the ongoing war. Families torn apart, children suffering, and entire communities living in fear and uncertainty. He highlighted South Africa's bold decision to bring a case before the International Court of Justice, accusing Israel of genocide and war crimes. This move, he explained, was not just about politics, but about upholding the principles of justice and accountability on the world stage. Ramaphosa reframed the conflict, insisting it must be seen as a matter of international law and fundamental human rights, not merely a political dispute. He urged the world to look beyond headlines and statistics, and to recognize the shared humanity at the heart of the crisis. The most powerful moment came when Ramaphosa drew a direct, unflinching comparison between Israel's treatment of Palestinians and the apartheid system that once gripped South Africa. His words were not just an accusation, but a call to conscience for the international community. The room seemed to hold its breath, bracing for the impact of his words. Everyone present knew that what was said here would reverberate far beyond the UN walls, challenging leaders and citizens alike to reflect on justice, history, and the urgent need for change. Ramaphosa did not mince words. His speech was direct, forceful, and impossible to ignore. Standing before the world's leaders, he chose to confront a subject many would rather avoid. He called out the striking parallels between apartheid South Africa and the ongoing Palestinian experience, drawing a line between two histories marked by division, exclusion, and state-sanctioned discrimination. "We South Africans know what apartheid looks like," he declared, grounding his argument in the painful reality of his nation's past. For Ramaphosa, this was not just political rhetoric, it was a personal and national memory, a lived truth that shaped his worldview. He described occupation, separation walls, and the systematic denial of rights as the hallmarks of a regime built on oppression. These were not isolated incidents, he argued, but part of a deliberate system designed to control and marginalize an entire people. For South Africans, these realities were not distant or abstract. They were echoes of their own struggle, reminders of the years spent fighting against injustice and segregation in their homeland. The comparison, deeply offensive to Israel and its allies, was a deliberate and provocative challenge to the international community. Ramaphosa's words forced diplomats and world leaders to confront uncomfortable truths about power, history, and responsibility. Ramaphosa's stance was not new, but his unwavering insistence on the apartheid analogy cemented South Africa's leadership in the Palestinian cause. It signaled a commitment to solidarity that went beyond words, rooted in shared experience and moral conviction. He reframed the conflict as a fight for fundamental human rights, not merely a territorial or political dispute. By invoking the language of universal rights, he appealed to the conscience of the world, urging action and empathy. The message was clear: the world must respond to this injustice as it once did to apartheid. Ramaphosa's call was not just for solidarity but for meaningful action, reminding us that history judges those who remain silent in the face of oppression. At the height of Ramaphosa's speech, his microphone abruptly went silent. The hall froze. Was it a technical glitch or a deliberate act of censorship? Delegates murmured, suspicion mounting as the symbolism of silencing a head of state became clear. The co-chairs scrambled, but the damage was done. The attempt to mute Ramaphosa only amplified his message. The image of a silenced African leader on the world stage became a rallying point. After a tense pause, sound was restored, and a hasty apology issued. Ramaphosa, unshaken, resumed, "I hope that was not a deliberate act to silence the truth." The interruption galvanized support, turning his speech into an act of defiance. The world was now watching more closely than ever. South Africa's support for Palestine is rooted in its own liberation struggle. The ANC's bonds with the Palestine Liberation Organization date back to their shared fight against oppression. Nelson Mandela's words, "Our freedom is incomplete without the freedom of the Palestinians," still guide South Africa's foreign policy. The parallels are personal past laws, segregated settlements, home demolitions. South Africans see their own past in Palestine's present. This isn't rhetoric, it's a lived reality that shapes their advocacy. That's why South Africa brought its case to the International Court of Justice and why Ramaphosa uses the word apartheid. For South Africa, standing with Palestine honors their own history and the universal values they fought for. It's a promise, never again must apply everywhere. Their solidarity is a moral obligation, not a political convenience. The microphone incident was a flashpoint, revealing a global shift on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. While the US doubled down on support for Israel, key Western nations, France, the UK, Canada, Australia, recognized Palestine, breaking with Washington. The Saudi-French summit on the two-state solution, boycotted by the US and Israel, showed the world was moving on without them. The overwhelming vote to let Abbas speak by video was a rebuke to efforts to isolate Palestinian leadership. The General Assembly's mood was defiant. Leaders like Erdogan condemned Israel in unprecedented terms. Sympathy for Israel had eroded, and the old rules of diplomacy were breaking down. Ramaphosa's message resonated with a growing coalition across Africa, Asia, and Latin America. The world was splitting, one camp clinging to security-first policies, the other demanding justice and rights for Palestine. With the world's attention fixed, Ramaphosa broadened his message beyond Palestine. He called for a genuine two-state solution based on 1967 borders and East Jerusalem as Palestine's capital. He demanded urgent reform of the United Nations, especially the Security Council, to give Africa a permanent voice. The Palestinian crisis, he argued, exposed the UN's failure to enforce its own resolutions. Ramaphosa's vision, a world where international law is binding for all, not just the weak. He challenged the UN to prove its relevance by upholding human rights everywhere. His plea was for a global order where every child in Gaza or elsewhere has equal rights and dignity. By linking Palestine to global justice and UN reform, he elevated the debate to a test of the world's conscience. The events at the UN in September 2025 marked a turning point in the global conversation on Palestine. Ramaphosa's speech and the attempt to silence him exposed the deepening divide between the US-Israel bloc and the rest of the world. The narrative was shifting, from power politics to a universal struggle for human rights. The apartheid analogy, once taboo, was now mainstreamed by a head of state at the UN. Recognition of Palestine by Western allies and the assertiveness of the Global South signaled a new multipolar world. Ramaphosa's call for Security Council reform underscored the urgency for change in global governance. The message was clear: the world would no longer accept justice denied to Palestine. The microphone may have been cut, but the call for equality and dignity rang out louder than ever.